My guest today is Rachael Hagerstrom of University of Massachusetts Amherst, and she's going to introduce us to what issues management is and why it's a perfect fit for social media managers. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. I'm Li Fowler, award-winning social media professional, author, and podcast host, and a recognized voice across the social media marketing industry. Social media managers are navigating the wild, ever-changing world of higher ed communications, and I'm here to share the real stories and lessons behind the posts. Each episode explores the challenges, strategies, and untold moments that come with running social media accounts in today's digital landscape. Let's get into it. Rachael, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much.
Well, you and I have something in common. We both come from like a news journalism background. So tell me how you transitioned from news to higher ed social.
That's right. I was a newspaper reporter and I briefly transitioned to a travel writer. So I was overseas. And then when I came back to the States, I was working as a web writer for an independent school, so a boarding school. And as I'm doing the web writing, I was used to telling stories and telling them in lots of different mediums. And so I'm looking around and I'm seeing that a lot of people on campus are using social media to tell the story of the institution, but they're not necessarily located in the communication office. And they're creating these channels because they see that this is an emerging technology, that they can get in front of audiences this way, that they can start to tell stories, but also they're spread throughout the school. And so they don't necessarily know the overall coherent picture of what's happening there or the stories that we're telling or even the strategic vision of communications. So when I started to see that, I said, here's a need, right? These people are creating these channels not because they particularly want to run social media channels for the school, but because they see we should be in these spaces and nobody is handling this. So I offered to take that on. I'm like, give me all the social media, I'll become your social media person, right? And this was back far enough that it wasn't really a job that people had. It was just a need that I saw, we're trying just to help the story of the school. We need to get in front of people where they are. And these are channels that are emerging that are really reaching our audience, which at that time was even younger than sort of like the high school to college age.
Yeah, it like social media it became part of someone's other duties as assigned if they were willing to take it on at the time.
That's right. Yeah. And I was really lucky in that I had leadership that sort of recognized this is an emerging position and this is somewhere where we need to have somebody who's doing more full-time work than we ever had before. So I think, my career has been marked by being like the first in my position in a lot of different places because as schools sort of realized we need somebody who's dedicated to this, who's really thinking about this all the time and being, very involved in like what's happening, they started to create these unique positions that they had never had before. And then they needed somebody who could step into that role. And they always wanted somebody experienced, but those positions had never existed before. Yeah. So I was really lucky in that my career trajectory was able to follow that a lot, that I was like, I've done this. Let me come do it for you.
No, totally. I feel you on that. I think a lot of us in the social media space have had similar experiences. So tell us, what is issues management exactly? And what qualifies as an issue?
At UMass, issues management is a team of two. It's myself and Sam Masinter, my boss. And it's really about identifying the early warning signs. It can often be defined as what it's not, and what it's not is crisis management. We're not emergency responders, we're not student conduct officers, and we're not, most of the time, PR people. We are the people who are looking for the early warning signs, the small ripples that if they're ignored, they can turn into big waves of problems. And we serve as internal communications consultants. So we only have one client, and that client is the university itself. And we're embedded in the community. We're really looking for the emerging trends. We're anticipating disruptive topics. we're confirming and coordinating details, and we're creating leadership briefings that can be used to guide further decisions.
Could it be something like, wow, a lot of people are really talking badly about a certain cafeteria on campus? I mean, I'm just throwing something out there, but like 2 or 3 complaints, fine. But if it becomes this thing, is that around something we're talking about here?
Yeah, so the difference between issues and crisis is that issues attempts to create strategic responses, and crisis management wants to get the campus back to normal. So if you think of issues as being broad and crisis specific, so the impact of the national government shutdown is an issues management piece.
Okay.
And a tornado warning is crisis management. Okay. Issues management is all about anticipating the potential problems, and like they're unique in terms of their timing and their scope and their outcomes. So, like crisis, like let's get back to where we were, where issues is let's avoid the problem altogether by getting the right information to the right people.
Okay. Yeah, before it becomes a whole brand crisis or PR crisis, right?
Exactly. It's all about reputation management and brand management and making sure that people just have enough of the correct information to make the decision. So as issues management people, we're not making the final decisions. We're just gathering all of the information that leadership would need to have in order to make the appropriate decisions in that given moment.
So this actually involves like social listening and monitoring, correct? So while you're listening and monitoring, like how do you determine whether something is actually going to become an issue versus like something that's just meaningless chatter?
Right. So we're looking a lot of times about like the overall volume, right? We want to see not that just somebody mentioned one thing on Yik Yak one time, but that there's like a lot of chatter and people are saying a lot of the same things. We're looking sort of like historically, has this issue kept reappearing? And is it something that people need to be aware of? And we're sort of looking at the potential impacts of the issue. Is this something that lends itself to a legal area? Is this something that, like would be a huge concern to leadership? So where is it? What's the volume of what's happening? And then we do a lot with campus partners where we're coordinating and communicating with a lot of people on campus. So we are working with the issues response team, which is a huge range of people from all across campus where we're getting together and we're sort of discussing things, right? And they will bring things forward and say, here's something that we're hearing in our area. And we say, oh, we've seen it on like a social side as well. And those conversations can really help define whether something is starting to emerge as an issue that we need to sort of jump on and do something about.
Sure. So if other people in different areas and departments are seeing it, then it's probably maybe becoming a thing, right? So right. You mentioned Yik Yak, and that like makes me nervous a little bit because I, for the most part, just don't pay attention to Yik Yak. Is that like a big platform that you sort of are monitoring, or can you name some others?
So like my job is to just be where the students are. Okay. And so I think it's really determinate by campus. Like in other places, I didn't even, look at Yik Yak because that was not where our students were talking. So I'm looking across all the different channels. I'm looking at Reddit. I'm looking at x.com. I'm looking at, to a certain extent, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I'm looking into the spaces where people are having those discussions because that's where I want to pay attention. I want to know like that where they're conversing and sort of like be listening about what they're conversing on, just to know what's on their mind and what they want to discuss more publicly.
I'm actually curious about how an average day of yours goes. So you start your day, and can you walk us through your process a little bit?
So we do have some listening tools. I think most bigger institutions do. In our case, we are using Sprout, for example.
Okay. Yep.
And we have a very good news and events team that is doing all of the content creation, a lot of the listening. Mm-hmm. So they're sort of monitoring the channels as well. And they create like a little, it's not really a report, but they say, you know, what's happening or what they've heard in any given day. They talk about like the news items that have mentioned people who are at UMass. So I'm looking through all of that, but then I'm going and doing sort of like horizon scanning across the different platforms because I want to see, are there things that people might not be aware of that might be issues? And some of them don't amount to anything, right? Like we just don't hear any, you know, somebody's like, this might be important, and it just doesn't turn out to be anything and nobody ever talks about it. But I'm like going through and looking at all that. But I'm also going through and looking at, you know, like all of the major news outlets that might mention us, you know, like are they putting something out there? I'm looking sort of like at the general trends in higher education. I'm also in charge of the federal updates page for UMass. So I also want to pay attention to like the national landscape and like federal changes. You know, are things coming down that might eventually affect us that I should be paying attention to? So I'm sort of doing scanning on those pages as well.
Say something catches your attention. What are the steps that you take after that?
Yeah, so we want to start, you know, gathering the details quickly through the networks and our experts on campus. So, you know, say we identify something that's coming along, right? Like there's a federal change that's going to deeply affect our students. There's like a new visa update that, you know, is going to impact international students. So we're going to start getting in touch with the experts on campus, right? Like who would know this information, who sort of like has a good handle on how this would affect people, who can actually like provide the background to this. And we're going to start developing like maybe a briefing doc if we think it rises to that level. So we start writing out, you know, like here's the FAQs on this, like here are the questions that we think people will ask and the answers. Here's where we can find more information. And we have like a lot of conversations because we're just checking in with people saying like, are you affected by this? Is this starting to worry you? We look for it, you know, like on campus, like, is this something that students are talking about? It is starting to worry them. And then we start developing a plan for, you know, like how we assess the scope of this, evaluate the risks, decide on the values aligned actions, and then really like figure out like what action we're going to take. We'll brief leadership and carry out a coordinated response. And that might be, you know, just an FAQ in the background, like that we provide. It might be that we want to put out something on our website or update a section so that people have the correct information. Or it might be like a full on, you know, we're going to put things out on social media. We're going to start, you know, like making sure all our campus partners are aware of this. You know, that the deans have the information so that they can filter it down to their groups and departments.
In case there's like a misunderstanding or...
to prevent that misunderstanding, right? To get ahead of it. So we don't want to wait until people are just massively confused and upset. We want them to already be armed with that information. So when people start to come to them and say like, look, I'm worried about this. I'm like, I have these questions. I don't know where to turn. They can say, great, we have the answers. Here they are.
We're on it. We're looking at it. I mean, you're essentially a social media manager. You're just not creating content. So this is like another professional path that people can take from social media. I don't hear a lot of these positions, right? It's something, but it seems like a natural fit.
We don't necessarily know of people who have this position elsewhere.
So you might be the only one.
I might be. Well, I don't know.
But
I haven't met one yet.
But it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense. Yeah. It's one of those things, again, like, you know, if you look back at my career in particular, it's a career of taking something that in retrospect seems really obvious and then creating a position for it, right? I can't claim that like I was the first one in this position. That CMS Macinter, my boss, who's, you know, really excellent at what he does. But it's so obvious in retrospect that this is a key position to have for a university, to have somebody who's sort of like monitoring all of this, who's paying attention to it, and who's really focused on making sure that this is something that, you know, people have access to, that they can have someone who is anticipating these questions.
But you're not like on the social media team. You're more like on the issues and sort of comms crisis sort of side of things. I know it's not exactly crisis, but it's a little different.
Yeah, I'm under the university relations umbrella,
Okay.
which also has the social media team, and I coordinate really closely with them.
And they let you know of things they're seeing. You let them know of things you're seeing.
Yeah, there's a lot of cross collaboration between the two groups. But I would say, the benefit of my position is that because I'm housed elsewhere and I'm not doing all the content creation work, then I can really focus on things that are important. And so one of the problems that I had as a social media manager in the past is that I was often looking for needles in haystacks that I didn't even know were there.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know the haystacks, so I can look for those needles.
It's not so much that the content creation is not important. It's just that that's a huge part of it, but you can just focus on listening to the conversations and the topics that is hovering around UMass and your brand.
I would never take away from the content creation. It's so much work. But before I was doing the issues management work, I just didn't realize what it was. And it was a little bit ad hoc because it was just me sort of saying like, hey, I think this is going to be a problem. And then I would kick it up to leadership and never hear anything more about it because, it wasn't my area, right? Like they would take it and I would just go about my business. And if I saw something else, I might flag it again.
They didn't sort of like involve you, which would have probably been really helpful. But honestly, like for me, that's a big part of my job too. I'm listening, monitoring, I'm providing strategy. But the thing that falls off is the creative stuff. Like ideally, they would be two different positions. So Rachael, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from like doing this work and dealing with this work?
Understanding your community and creating those partnerships is just key. Like I could not do my work if I didn't have community partners throughout the university, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can only be aware of things that I know are issues. And there's only so much that social media monitoring is going to show you. It's really, really essential that you have those valuable partnerships throughout campus so that you have your campus partners coming to you and saying, I heard about this or I know about this thing. Can you help me figure it out and figure out like if we need to do anything about it, or can you watch out for this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And without that, you really can only do your job to a limited amount. So having people across the university who know the value of this position, who understand what it's for and how we can help them do their jobs as well, is just so essential.
I bet it also helps to have you in the room. So before you would flag something and send it upward and it would just go into the ether. Like you didn't know what decisions were being made based on that information, but now you're probably a part of the discussion, which is probably helpful, right?
My background as a reporter helps me sort through the things that are, falsehoods or misperceptions or misunderstandings, and really get down to like, here's what we know is true and accurate, right? Here are the perceptions that people are seeing, and here's how we can sort of counter some of that when people are getting a complete wrong idea about things.
See, that's what I think that human experience is so key, is that you can use that experience to gather the difference between what is meaningful and what is just sort of maybe trolling or just, noise, right? So I think that editorial experience, like that knowing what to send up, to leadership, like what's important, like what I think is key in all of your experience and having the background that you have, right?
Yeah, and I think that there was one moment that was really pulls all these threads together. And that was when we started to see people posting about ICE on campus. They were posting on different platforms, including Yik Yak, but also, X and different spaces, pictures of white vans. They said ICE was on campus, that they had verifiable information. We started to hear that there was a lot of fear spreading among our students and in our international community. And we had faculty who were going to their department heads and saying, like, what's the deal? Like, we've heard that this is true. And we were able to track down that rumor. This was back in the fall when there was, a surge of concern around this issue, that we were able to track down that rumor to a Defense Department agent who was conducting a standard background check for a student and had gone into HR.
Okay.
So they were clearly a representative of the government who was on campus, who had gone into one of our main administrative buildings and had met with administrators there. But it had absolutely nothing to do with ICE, right? And so, by being able to pull all those things together, seeing that fear on social media, but also having the verifiable information from our campus partners who were saying, actually, this is what happened and this is who this person was, we were able to pull all that together and then put out the messages on social, on our website, to let people know, like, this is what actually we can confirm and this is what was happening. And then we saw like a lot of that fear just completely dissipate. It's not going away in our environment right now, but it was right. It helped a lot that we were able to put that
You're
out.
a voice of authority. You can like negate or confirm or, you quell the fears, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So what recommendations would you have for offices or departments that are seeing a need for this type of work? Like, how would you encourage them to take the step and say, yeah, this is a viable position that you need to have?
Well, I'd start to look at, what the needs of the campus are, especially nowadays, right? And sort of like, where are the pain points for your communities, right? Where are people getting stuck? Where are they not finding that information? Where are they sort of making up their own answers because they're not finding a way to get answers from leadership? And also, where is leadership not being able to find the information that they need, right? It's both going down to the community part, but also up to leadership, right? So if I can go spend my day putting together all this information and just provide them with a one sheet that they can rely on, how much time does that save them? That saves them so much heartache in terms of getting questions that they don't know how to answer or feeling lost on topics that they haven't had a chance to be briefed on yet. That's really what I want to provide them with so that they know when somebody brings this up, I'm not caught out, right? Like, I know what this is. I know the background. I have the answers and I can answer the person's question and really have that conversation with them.
Yeah, this is exciting because you're opening up or introducing us, many of us, to a new sort of career pathway, right? Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think this is very exciting. So, Rachael, this is Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. And I have to ask you, what is your confession?
So I think you've jumped the gun a little bit on me because my confession was going to be that, there really was a moment in my social media career where I felt pretty stuck because I thought, here I am, I'm an expert in TikTok trends and Instagram, and where do I go from here, right? Like, is there anywhere else that I can go besides being just really good at navigating the social media landscape? Is there somewhere where I could evolve my career? And I would want people to start thinking about how social media work is really applicable to so many more areas. You have so much more strategic vision than you realize. You're a master at being able to read these communities and understand them and respond to them. And there are career paths out there that are looking for this expertise. And they might not be called social media. They might be called something different, but they're perfect for the next stage in a social media manager's career.
Can you talk us through a little bit, if you don't mind? Like, what was the moment where you felt unstuck? You felt stuck. I get that. We've all felt that way in our careers, in or out of social. But what was the moment where you're like, oh, okay. And what helped you get unstuck?
Sam Mesenter used to be my boss at Smith College when I was the social media manager. He was hired into this new position, this totally new area as an issues management professional at UMass. And they basically created a position that he was just like, this is what you need, and this is where my expertise is. So like I had been feeding him all of this stuff. He was the person that I was like sending all the stuff to.
As a social media manager?
As the social media manager. I was like,
okay.
I was like, Sam, look at this trend, like, look at this issue. Like, people are all talking about this, or I'm looking at this in the stats and I'm seeing that there is like a problem here.
Okay.
Like, we should be paying attention to this. And so I would feed him all this information, right? I would be like, Sam, I'm doing all this content creation work. You have to approve all that. But also, people are really mad about this thing. So you should pay attention to that and do something about it. And so I would send it to him. So when he went into this new work, he remembered that I had sort of been feeding him all this information. And when he had an opportunity to create somebody underneath him, he wanted to bring me in because he recognized the value in having somebody in social media who could do like all the horizon scanning and sort of see those pain points bubbling up and see like where, the constituents were starting to talk about things, where if we looked at the analytics, like there might be a problem. And so he said, I know you have this expertise, come over here and do it for us.
So he knew the value and how much it helped him and created a position for it. I love that story, Rachael. Awesome. And congratulations. And congratulations on your new title, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, if we go back to issues management can be a confusing topic. So we actually clarified it and are now calling it strategic comms, which I think is very on the money for what it is.
Well, congratulations to that. Thank you for sharing your journey, your job with us. I learned a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.